Hello, everybody. It's April Perry and Jonathan Bailor back with another episode of the SANE Show. Are you ready for a great podcast today, Jonathan?
I'm ready, April. I know we've got a packed mailbag. I saw Santa Claus coming in. He had his sane sack full of questions, and I'm ready to answer them.
All right. I actually really love the questions today, and I love what's happening out there as more people are learning about SANE and going SANE. And these questions always inspire me. So I'm super appreciative of those who submitted them. And we're just going to go ahead and start with just a really simple one that I think is based on the main food groups of SANE, but not always clear to people who are getting started. So, all right, SANE eating and legumes. I understand the veggies first, then protein, then the whole food fats and the low fructose fruit, etc. But I'm a girl who loves legumes. So where do those fit in? Specifically, black beans and hummus. Can I fit those in? And if so, what's the max amount I should have in a day? Okay, Jonathan, let us know.
Here comes the best possible answer. We have actually a free download which answers this and all questions related to the number of servings you can eat. So if you go to sanesolution.com and you click on free blueprint, you can actually download a guide which outlines what we call the SANE food groups, as well as the SANE spectrum and the recommended servings for each of those food groups. And what you'll see in that download, if you sanesolution.com and click on blueprint at the top of the screen, is that we have essentially three big categories of food. Let's call them green light foods. These are foods that are super sane and we want to go out of our way to eat more of them. Then we have yellow light foods, which are usually categorized as 0 to 2 servings per day are fine. Like, don't go out of your way to eat more of them, but eating none of them is fine. And if you want to eat 1 or 2 servings of them, it's not going to increase your likelihood of getting diabetes, for example. And then there are red light foods, which are foods we want to eat so much of the green light foods that we're just too full for them. Legumes fit right there in the middle, where 0 to 2 servings per day can be totally fine. So this person is clear. They are ready to go, and you can get all that information, sanesolution.com. Just click on Blueprint.
One of the things that really helped me when I was first getting to know SANE and getting to know you was when you said something like, I don't go out of my way to put black beans in my smoothies, for example. I'm not trying to figure out more ways to eat black beans. But if I go to a restaurant like Chipotle and I'm getting a big salad and I'll put black beans on there, it's not like I can't eat them. But they're not, if you're going to choose between eating more deep green leafy vegetables or beans or hummus, then you would just choose the vegetables.
That's exactly right. And that is the key distinction, April, is we can really simplify this. There are foods you want to consciously eat more of. There's foods that if they're served to you, it's fine. And then there are foods that I would strongly recommend you do not spend money on ever. Beans are in that middle category. If they're served to you or if they're what's available, it's all good, but no need to go buy a 50-pound bag of beans.
Okay. All right. I thought this next question was really fun. Want to know a higher priority. If I had to pick one, would you pick grass-fed beef or organic vegetables?
Grass-fed beef.
Okay. Why?
Vegetables need to be eaten in such high quantities that buying organic could become cost prohibitive. Trying to afford 16 servings of organic vegetables per day might be out of the budget for a lot of people. Also, the total disregard for animal health that takes place with conventional beef and just the amount of toxicity that can be stored in fatty cuts of conventional beef is not good. I mean, you can wash pesticides to some extent off of plants. Okay. What they do to cows in modern farming is not a good thing that you can't wash off.
That off. Yeah. Okay. That's a really good answer there. Okay. Next question. Sensitive stomach. I've noticed that now that I have been sane for more than a year, if I eat anything insane like French fries or a lot of white bread or a chocolate cake, etc., I get really sick to my stomach. Now, it's a good thing because it helps me not want to eat the insane food, but I'm wondering what's going on with my system.
I've never thought about it in the context of, it's almost one could call it a maladaptation, which is somehow when we eat nonsense foods, we feel less bad eating them than when we stop eating them for a while and our body's like, what's going on? And
Yeah.
I don't know if there's been any peer-reviewed research around why, if you eat, well, actually, I mean, okay, so there probably is. So now I'm going to go from proven science to educated hypothesis. So I just want to give that quick disclaimer. So
I think that's clarity is great.
Okay, so here's educated hypothesis from Jonathan Bailor. All right, so based on general, the way your brain and body works when it comes to being sensitive or lack thereof to chemicals, because food is a compilation of chemicals. We tend to not think of them that way, but anything you put into your body triggers a cascade of chemical reactions in your body, whether it's a pill or whether it's a piece of spinach. It's all information telling your body what to do. So let's think about alcohol, for example. Alcohol, if you drink a lot of it, your body responds by becoming adapted to alcohol, and it takes more and more alcohol to trigger the same response. So let's say you're in a fraternity in college and you're drinking a lot of alcohol, and it takes a 6-pack of beer to have any impact on your body. And then you stop drinking alcohol completely and you say, oh my goodness, once I drink 1 can of beer, I feel the same impact. Well, what could be happening, and what does happen definitely with sugar and processed carbs, is your body becomes desensitized to them. This is actually what leads to diabetes, because your cells become resistant. It's called insulin resistance. There's things like leptin resistance in your brain. So things that normally would, like the amount of sugar that it would take for you to feel bad once you're in this resistant state, is radically decreased, which is a good thing once you go sane. But yeah, in some ways, actually, here's a good analogy. It's like your internal organs have developed calluses so that they can protect themselves from this influx of nonsense. And as you go sane, what you're technically doing is you're reversing a condition called metabolic dysregulation, and you're getting rid of those calluses on your organs and cells. So even a little amount will now actually get into them, and then it makes you feel bad because that quote unquote protective layer is gone, but that protective layer causes diabetes, so you don't want that. Does that help?
No, it really does help, because I've definitely found this. I mean, now, even though like I typically don't even crave insane foods and I have really good sane habits, so it's just I'm not even hungry for them, I find that like if I'm at a party and someone, you know, has this beautiful chocolate cake or something like that, like, hey, you want some? It's not just that I'm not hungry for it. It's like I don't even want it because I know it's going to make me sick. And I feel really grateful for that. I told this girl lady one time we were at a party and I said, oh, you know what? It would just make me so sick if I ate it. And she said, oh, I wish that were my problem. That's not my problem, you know? And I feel like, while it does sometimes feel like, wow, I'm so healthy that I can't eat anything unhealthy, I love it that my body now just craves good food. Like I see insane food and there's not even a desire. And I think that's what we want the whole world to get to, is that we don't want to say everyone needs to eat sane foods so you can really be healthy. And then you can sit around looking at everyone else enjoying their life and their cupcakes, and you can just feel like you're going without and that you're so deprived your whole life. Like that's not the goal. I think it's helpful to know that as you heal your body and get rid of like those calluses, as you're saying, as a symbol, or as, you know, a metaphor there, I feel like that's a great place to be. Now you're motivated not only to eat healthy so that you can be healthy, but so that you don't have to go through that sickness.
And it is huge, April, because that's when we see long-term lifestyle change. When we talk about sane eating, objectively, sane eating is less challenging than, let's say, for example, being a vegan. I mean, being a vegan is incredibly difficult to do, but people who are vegans, their whole family is vegan, they don't feel deprived as a vegan. In fact, it makes them happy. Why? Because if they eat meat, it makes them feel sick. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy where they have a mind state and a physiological state where if they veer off their path, it is way more painful to them and way less pleasurable than staying on their path. So if your body can crave and desire sane foods and naturally avoid insane foods, like a vegan's body works relative to animal, I mean, how much easier does that make not becoming diabetic? It's amazing.
I love it. Okay, so Thanks for that explanation. That's fantastic. Next question is, they need ideas for easy lunches for young children. Okay, now we have more about this in the Sane Families program, so we won't take the whole show on this, but let me just ask, Jonathan, let's say you're making lunch for a little child. What would you put in there?
The first question would be, who is this little child and why am I making their lunch? So,
that is a good question.
so first it's like, what is this small child doing in my house and why are they asking me for lunch? No, but maybe someday, hopefully, that will be applicable if things go according to plan. But anyway, what would I serve to a small child for lunch? There's no question that it is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. Let's think about the way like Lunchables are produced, right? Lunchables take meat and they add preservatives and just nonsense to them. So what I want to be transparent about is, so there are things about like having diabetes is hard and it's not fun. Being overweight is hard and it's not fun. Having food allergies is hard and it's not fun. It is objectively easier to pull a Lunchable off the shelf and to stick it in a bag and to say, Billy, eat this. Yeah. Preparing sane lunches for kids is not as easy as feeding kids garbage. It's not. And there's no way around that. What is a sane lunch for a child? I think we need to take a more macro look at this and say, first, the concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner are human-made constructs. Like the fact that you're only supposed to eat eggs at breakfast. What? Who said that? What does that mean? So could you, for example, have hard-boiled eggs for lunch? Of course you could have hard-boiled eggs for lunch. Could you just pack for lunch what you ate for dinner last night in a Tupperware container with an ice pack? Yes, you could. Yeah. So I think the first thing is, once we free ourselves from this box of there are lunch foods versus there are just foods, that in and of itself can make figuring out what to put in the lunch bag way easier.
Okay, I love that you said that. I think as far as answering this question, a little more in detail, since I have an elementary schooler who I'm preparing lunch for and try to do as much sanely as I can, I'll share some of the things that are working for us. But then I think going into this next question at the same time, how do you help reluctant family members while trying to go sane? Maybe we talk about this a little bit more too, because this is where some of the children may be reluctant. Now, we've been sane in our home, and not totally with all members, but we've been doing this for about 2 years now. So Spencer was in 2nd grade when we started. Now he's in 4th grade. And so his biggest complaint is that he doesn't feel cool opening vegetables when all of his friends have Cheez-Its and Oreos. That's his biggest concern. So we've talked a lot about the why. I mean, we've talked about this in previous episodes as well. So that's really important to have those conversations ongoing. But like, okay, this morning, Spencer is making his lunch. And so the first thing we do is we look in the fridge and see which vegetables he wants to take. So I gave him a choice. Today, we didn't have a ton available. I said, either we can slice up this or you can take a salad. The remains already like, I want the pepper. So I started the cutting, took out the seeds and gave him the knife and the cutting board, and he cut the rest of the pepper, put it in a bag. So that was his vegetable choice. Now I would give him more vegetables, but that's about what I can do at lunch. Now I sent him some fruit. We have oranges, big navel oranges. He's learned how to cut them. So he sliced his own orange and had a little bag of oranges. And then Spencer has a hard time with protein, but he will do egg whites if we do hard-boiled egg whites. So we can have a whole bunch of hard-boiled eggs. If I've got a ton of hard-boiled eggs that are ready for him, he will peel those every day. He doesn't have a problem taking those, and he'll sprinkle a little salt and pepper or whatever in the bag. And then as far as nuts go, like we'll put some whole food fats in there. He likes raw almonds and he likes pistachios. Those are some that he'll like. So that's just kind of a starter. Anything you would add to that, Jonathan, before we move on to reluctant family members?
Well, I like having that template, April. If anyone's ever gone to a Mongolian grill type restaurant, right? They usually have different stations. So it's like, here's the rice and noodles, and here's the vegetables, and here's the protein. This goes back to a lot of previous episodes where it's like, I would beg people to give themselves permission to keep this simple, right? Like what you just said, there's non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense protein, and whole food fats. So find a non-starchy vegetable that your child likes. You can have have eggs, you could have cottage cheese for the protein, you could have cottage cheese, you could have Greek yogurt, you could have cut up seasoned chicken breasts, you could have ground beef, you could have tuna fish. I mean, we can sit here and list nutrient dense proteins,
Yeah.
and we could sit here and list various nuts and seeds. The bottom line is just find that basic template. What's a vegetable they like? What's a nutrient dense protein they like? What's some whole food fats they like? Throw an ice pack in there, throw a piece of fruit in there, and you're good to go.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's taken getting used to. It's a lot more preparation. And Spencer, before he would get like 2 times a year, he could eat at the cafeteria at school. And today on the drive, he said, can I eat once at the cafeteria every holiday? So he's trying to kind of arrange this. But the thing is, okay, he's 8. I can do as much as I can to help train him now, which I'm doing, but I'm hopeful that these are going to be habits that will carry on, and he'll hear me reminding him to eat vegetables the rest of his life, which I'm excited about. Okay, but as far as how you help reluctant family members, I mean, this is something, I mean, Jonathan, I know that you have extended family members who aren't all 100% sane. There are people in your life who aren't 100% sane. And in our family, Aaliyah and I are like the most diehard. But it is hard because not everybody has the same goals that we do. And so I'll just share maybe a couple of things and then love to hear more from you, Jonathan, what you would recommend. I think that number one is we want to eliminate any judgment. So if I'm eating healthy food and someone in the family has chosen to eat something that's not healthy, if I am looking at them like they're not as good as I am, or if there's any judgment going on, that's just going to kill it right there. So there has to just be this mutual respect, especially as people are adults and, they can make their own choices. So that's, I think, essential. You've got to do it for you first. And then the other thing I would suggest is the more you can research and find new recipes, like we just made pizza on butternut squash instead of a crust the other day. And the whole family ate it, like everyone ate it. And so that was exciting. So I think the more you can come up with new recipes and new ideas and just keep putting offerings out in front of people, it's not going to happen overnight. But eventually, the people who are not eating healthfully will start eating a little bit more healthfully as you kind of figure out a way to make it work together. So those are some initial ideas.
April, I just want to build off of the idea of, if you're going to try, I would say try not to try. What I mean by that is I don't think SANE is an evangelical thing. There's a lot of research that shows the more you try to force someone to do something, the less they're going to do it, period, for anything. And I think we've all experienced this. So I live my life, and I've structured the entire SANE program to reflect I believe Gandhi's quote of "be the change you want to see in the world." So the question of how to help reluctant family members, the literal question is how to help reluctant family members while trying to go sane. I think the number one way, here's my specific recommendation, officially Jonathan Bailor on record, is be a beacon of light in terms of your sanity, period. I would actually do nothing to try to make them sane directly. I would just, when your kids start asking, or your spouse or your partner or your roommate start asking, what are you doing? Or like, wow, you are so much happier now. And then you just say, here's what I'm doing. And you don't even say, you should do this. It's just, I mean, here's a silly example, and I'm going to talk a little bit now. I'm sorry, because I'm getting excited. But so, for example, if you go to a gym, or even if you meet someone in a social setting and they're very physically fit, it's very common. They're not going up to their friends and they're being like, try this workout routine that I'm on. It's really important. You should do it. People will come up to them and say, Sally, I haven't seen you for 5 years. You look fantastic. What are you doing? And then you don't say, well, let me tell you what you should do. You say, here's what I'm doing. So if you can create that dynamic where your results are so self-evident and beautiful that people start asking you what they're doing or start asking for your suggestions, and then you always phrase them in the context of here's what I do, or if I was in that situation, I would do this. You never use the word you. I think you will have fantastic results.
I think that's excellent. And I think that that works with children as long as you and your spouse or your children have kind of set some parameters. Because with like little kids, if you just say you can either eat sugar all day or you can eat, saying like me, the kids are just going to choose the sugar because they don't understand yet. They don't have that capability to really make clear decisions. But I think as children are starting to get older, like I found with my high schoolers, I feel like, okay, if they know, here, I have 3 teenagers now. My 3 teenagers know, here's what foods are healthy for you, here's what foods aren't, and I'm here to help you. But there's not like a compulsion to eat just like I do. I feel like there's the balance is really good. It's to the point where I can't beat myself up if every member of my family doesn't want to eat 10 servings of vegetables a day. And if people like cookies, like I can't beat myself up over that, and I can't stress over that, or I'll just have anxiety all the time. But I think that what you're saying is like, as I focus on my own health and I focus on learning new recipes for my family, and I'm chopping vegetables and I'm making it available to them and letting them know how much I love it, that influence is going to carry over at some point.
And April, you're spot on that. Of course, a 2-year-old child, right? You don't say like, Sally, you could look both ways before you cross the street if you want to, but I'm not going to enforce that, right? Like it's definitely a little bit different based on age, but I think the macro point that's really important, and I appreciate that distinction, is helping people to be sane is not different from helping people to do anything. So the way you, for example, protect your child from getting in a van with strangers, it versus the way you would protect your spouse from getting in a van with strangers is different. So with any lifestyle change, SANE is a behavior change, and the way we manifest behavior change in people is a science that's been studied extensively. And I think we sometimes look at food as if it's a unique. It's a behavior change. Like if you want to get your kids to play the piano, what do? Some kids aren't into music. Some adults aren't into music. You can try as hard as you want to get someone who is not musically inclined to love music. They're not going to do it. Some people don't care about their health. Nobody nowadays doesn't know that smoking will kill them. There's still plenty of people that smoke. So for some people, their health is not a priority. There's nothing that can be done in that context until that person thinks that their health is a high priority.
Yeah. And I think just taking that element out of you love that person, whether or not they're eating the way that you want them to eat. I think that that's just an important thing. So I feel like things we've made mistakes on in the past is if there's ever any pressure or judgment. So anyway, take that for what it's worth.
April, that's so critical too, right? Because even when people like vegetarians, vegans, things like that, there's what I call like the awesome vegetarian vegan who comes to a Thanksgiving and is cool about it. And then there's the judgmental vegetarian or vegan. It's the same thing here. Like if you're an awesome piano player, you don't like try to make everyone else a piano player. You're just like, this is what I do. And if you start playing the piano and people are like, that's beautiful, how did you learn how to do that? Then of course you'll share it. I see eating the same way.
It's true, but if someone never plays the piano, they usually won't die from that. And I think that's why there's more emotion attached with this, because if the people you love are eating food that's awful for them, that could cause diabetes or obesity or cause horrible health problems for them. And so I feel like that's where there is a lot of this emotion because you care so much. But I think it's making that distinction between, is this someone for whom I have a stewardship, like a child, that I need to teach and train? Or is this another adult in my life who can make their own choices? You have to be able to make that distinction.
And I would urge people to give themselves permission. I know, for example, there's been instances in my own family where there's small children and then there's teenagers and adults, and it's a totally different ballgame. And like if your teenager just says, I'm not going to go to school, at some point it's like, well, we can't make them go to school. What do we do now? So, and if they don't go to school, their life will objectively be worse. So there is a limitation on what we can do. And I know sometimes we're so hard on ourselves, and what you eat is such a critical part of your life, but there's a lot of other critical parts of our lives that we don't consider ourselves to be 100% accountable for what everyone else in our life does. So hopefully we don't hold ourselves to a unachievable standard when it comes to how everyone else in our lives eats every day of their lives.
I think that's a good way to put it. Thank you. Okay, I have a couple more questions. Can we do these a little quicker?
Rapid fire. I'm ready.
Okay. Is there any alternative to coconut flour besides nut flour? Someone who says, I'm gluten-free. I've used rice flour or pre-made gluten flours, but those aren't SANE. Am I just out? Is there any way around it? I couldn't think of anything. So what would you say?
I'm not aware of anything or the coke. I mean, you basically have grain-based flours or nut-based flours.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of what's available. I mean, maybe they're a legume. I don't know if you could use something like a pea
Yeah.
or something legume based. Maybe. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, because that's super hard. I'm like, oh, I don't know what we would eat. Okay, next question, sane reading. Do you have any books that you recommend other than The Calorie Myth, obviously, but any books that you tell people, oh, here's just some great reading if someone's looking for an awesome audiobook or a book from the library to help them support them in their sane goals?
Yes, and they have nothing to do with eating, because if you have your mind and personal productivity, I mean, April, you're an expert in this, right? So if you're depressed and disorganized, it's really hard to be sane. Whereas if you're energetic and happy and organized, it's a lot easier to be sane. So if you haven't read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I would strongly recommend reading that book and treating it as almost like, that's been literally a lifesaver for me. So things around personal productivity and how we manage our lives and our time and our priorities, I think once you get that stuff on lock, whether it's being sane or being a great piano player or being a great spouse or being a great friend, anything you want to do when you have your own house in order becomes radically easier. So my number one recommendation would be The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Love it. Love that.
What about you?
Okay. Well, yes. I mean, so Getting Things Done is like my productivity book that I absolutely love. But I worked with Franklin Covey, and yes, absolutely, I recommend that as well. And I don't know, I feel like as far as health books, there's a lot of different books that have a lot of different ideas. And so I just kind of stick with The Calorie Myth. But I'm always open to learning what other people are saying. That actually helps me to come up with good questions to ask you, Jonathan, because sometimes there's other ideas that, oh, that's actually really helpful. But the other thing that I would think of, or that I would just recommend, is just becoming more of a reader in general. And we've talked about that in the past, just as far as listening to audiobooks while you're blending your smoothies, or as you're walking or exercising more, putting more goodness into your mind. I've been doing, the audiobooks has a bunch of free books on there. I'm listening to the biography of Benjamin Franklin right now. There's one on Abraham Lincoln I was just listening to. I'm reading all kinds of books on how to reduce anxiety, how to set goals. I mean, there's so many good books out there. And Essentialism is another one that I love. So I'm always reading, probably like 4 books every week. I'm just reading all the time, and I love it. But I think what's exciting about SANE is that it's encouraging you to build your whole life, mind, body, spirit, all of it at the same time. So I think it's not necessarily like, oh, you need these other health books. I think it's just like, start going through the SANE formula as far as like the vegetables and protein and fats, and then add into it just additional great ideas, the best books that you can learn about and hear about. And we do a lot of this on learndobecome.com. So come hang out with us there. We'll talk more about books as well.
And April, there is like you alluded to, there's a sane approach to reading. And the sane approach to reading, for instance, is like, instead of there's junk food and there's real substantive food. There's a lot of junk that can be read. And then there are things like biographies of great individuals, books that listening to audiobooks. And there's a free app you can use called Overdrive, which works with your local library system, where you can just get free audiobooks. I know people love podcasts. This is a podcast. You should listen to this podcast, but you should also listen to books and read books, and don't get all your information from podcasts and magazines, because when you have a human being who spends 10 years of their life creating a synthesis of information that spans 300 pages, I mean, that's a 10 years worth of someone's life that you can enjoy while you're cooking your vegetables. I mean, that's a huge thing. So I eat nutrient dense foods. I would look for information dense books rather than snack food, portioned out information.
Love that. Awesome. Okay, I have one final question, and this is my question, but super kind of basic maybe for you. I heard that you shouldn't drink water while 30 minutes before you eat or while you're eating or 30 minutes after you're eating because it doesn't digest your food right.
I think this falls in the category of do
Random
what
health.
works for you. I mean, again, this is, if that is true, which I don't know if it is true, you know what else is true? Drinking water is really good for you. So, and being stressed unnecessarily is bad for you. So if you're like, I'm supposed to drink water, but not now, and if I drink water here, I'm bad. This falls in the category of ignore, drink water.
Drink water. Okay, because I was thinking, oh, I'm trying to drink a ton of water every day, but if I can't drink before or after I'm eating and I'm eating on yeah, then I was kind of stressed about it. So, okay. I love how you always bring it down to just something super basic. Drink water, don't stress about it. That's really helpful. Okay, so next action. Do you have any suggestions for a next action for this one? We've talked about a lot of questions in this mailbag today, which I think it's been fantastic.
I think a good next action, this is like a catchphrase that I've been working on, and I don't actually know if it's fully refined, but it has to do with the question you just asked and the questions throughout, which is that practically done is infinitely better than theoretically perfect. What I mean by that is, like, we always are like, theoretically, should we drink water at these times? And what theoretically is the best this to do? No. Theories don't change your life. What you actually do is what changes your life. So the question is not, is it theoretically perfect? The question is it compatible with your life long-term and your happiness? So with all these questions, with any question that you have, any answer that you hear, try to make sure I can actually do this in my life sustainably and enjoyably. And if I can't, the answer is no. And if I can, the answer is yes.
Okay, I love that. All right, can I give a little sneak peek for our next show?
Sure, yes.
Okay, because this is another question that was asked where they want to know personal preferences, like literally what you and I eat. So we talked about a SANE day, and we talked about kind of overall, but between now and the next time I get our podcast recorded, we want to, and Jonathan, you eat kind of weird. So I think everybody wants to know literally, what does Jonathan eat? And I'm going to be actually taking some really good notes and sharing what I'm eating. And I actually want to be able to talk with you, Jonathan, a little bit and see if there's some ways I can tweak what I'm eating to make it even saner or better, and just be able to share some of the things that we like and things that are working. Does that sound good?
This is like an episode of 24 from back in the day. It's that cliffhanger ending that makes you want to tune in. Next time on the SANE Show, what are Jonathan and April actually eating? I love it. I love it. Well, so as a next action, I would say as a follow-up next action, people just have to kind of calm down because they're probably so excited after hearing that is their stretch goal, is to continue with your life with that much excitement as the next week is coming up. But no, I think that sounds great, April, and I hope everyone is as excited to cover that as I know you and I are, and I hope that this mailbag was helpful. And remember, this week and every week after, stay sane.